Okay, we're ready. Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jamison Bobbin. I am the board chair of the Economic Development Alliance. Thanks for joining us this morning. As always, we have a packed agenda. As far as board updates from our last meeting, we were able to go in and approve the 2021 budget, so that's exciting. With COVID out there, we kind of have another line item for the summit, hoping that things will return at some point to normal and we can get back to some event like that, but time will tell, I guess. This morning, we have a handful of presenters. I'll remind everyone if you can keep your updates related to economic development. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Mike for the executive director update.
Good morning, everybody. As Jamison indicated, we passed a budget and it has us back in a positive manner, assuming that membership is flat. We built two scenarios. One is with some type of a summit, whether it be hybrid or completely in person, remains to be seen in the fall. And then the second is without, as we had this year. But both scenarios has us in a positive space, just based on a couple of things, including us receiving or qualifying for PPP second round in 2021. The 2020 annual report is out. We mailed it a couple of weeks ago. If you would like a digital copy, please just chat Emily, the host, or send me an email at mike@yeslpc.com, and we'll get that out to you right away. We cover the 2020 activity. We cover 2020 end of year financials, and talk about the 3-year strategic plan and the 3 major initiatives. Speaking of which, the focused initiatives, housing, business capacity and growth, and workforce recruitment and development, we're making some progress on all 3 of these. In terms of housing, the Alliance strongly supports the renewal effort of the Housing Authority, and we spent some time in conversation with Mike Segrist, who's leading that effort. Mike is currently inventorying all public owned property in the area to figure out where there's appropriate or potential for projects. And Dan Corman will talk briefly about real estate statistics that are fresh off the press for January that gives you an indication of why workforce housing is becoming our top priority. In terms of business capacity, there's lots of progress out in La Posta. The city and the county have met recently to talk about joint planning to make development out there efficient. We had the large 90-acre parcel sold in December to a local developer. So we're pretty excited about what's going to happen there in the next few months on the heels of the sewer study and infrastructure being budgeted by the county. In terms of workforce recruitment, we put some effort into movetodurango.com and the job postings. If you have job postings and have not already submitted those available jobs to the Alliance, we are going to spend some money from the Ready Grant to promote those jobs in paid advertisement. And so would like to have a robust job board from our members that we would put some money into. So please send those to Emily or myself, and we'll get that going. The focus of the movetodurango.com is to help with job recruitment, let people know what relocation might look like, and we've even got real estate listings in there in partnership with Colorado Real Estate Network. With that said, I'm going to ask Dan to cover some real estate data briefly, and then we'll hand it back to you, Jamison.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Mike. I just want to be brief on updates. As you know, 1 month statistics can't tell a whole story, but I think everybody understands the national headlines, and it's the same story here locally. So as you see this showing January sales of 76 units. That 76 units are the most units in a January in the history of the MLS, as far as I can tell. So it's a lot of units. If you'll move to the next slide. The average and median pricing is also up 22 and 25% respectively when you look at a monthly basis. But when you look at a 12-month rolling average, that number does come down, even though it's still pretty high, 12 and 15% respectively. So, you know, inventory is tight, prices are up, supply and demand at its finest. Just to anecdotally speak about the pricing a little bit, no, you can keep going, Mike, that's fine. Back to the, yeah. So this is probably Swahili in general, but out of the 76 units sold, half were between 300 and 600. So that's really the sweet spot for where people are looking in our area. If you look at, and I had to look at a different graph to kind of pull these numbers out, but between 280,000 and 600,000, 580,000 to be exact, there are only 29 active listings. That's of the 142 total listings. So the attainable pricing point is a very small percentage of our housing stock. This takes into account all types of housing, condos, townhomes, single family homes, et cetera. So I think that's why the Alliance is really pushing to get workforce housing as one of our major initiatives this year and beyond. And I'm really excited to see what kind of work we can do. If you have any questions, let us know.
Super, thank you, Dan. We'll move to Brian Devine with San Juan Basin Health for a brief update on COVID and the status of the county. Morning, Brian.
Good morning. I'd like to thank Dan Corman for being my opening act this morning, and I'll give you my usual COVID-19 update, focusing on our top-line messaging. Vaccine availability continues to be limited as eligibility for the vaccine expands. We are receiving more doses into the region, but not enough to keep pace with demand, so we continue to be supply limited. It's important for everyone to know that even if you've been vaccinated or recovered, it is possible to become infected and spread the virus. So we urge everyone, including those who have been vaccinated, to continue to wear masks and practice proven public health precautions and quarantine appropriately until everyone can be fully vaccinated in order to protect your community. On the mitigation front, many of you are aware that La Plata County has moved into level blue on the state's COVID-19 dial. This is a result of the parameters for dial levels changing this previous weekend. However, we really are right on the border between level blue and level yellow. So we do want everyone to remain vigilant and to make plans as if, especially for events, as if we are in the level yellow procedures. Finally, we want to recommend that people continue to get tested if they have symptoms, if they work in a high contact position, or if they have been potentially exposed to the virus. I'll give you a vaccine status report first here. This is as of last week, and then as of Monday, the row that's listed as 1B2 here is also in progress. So the phases that are eligible for vaccine right now are 1A, 1B1 and 1B2 on your screen. So you can see what we've added into eligibility this week is the general public ages 65 through 69, as well as educators and student-facing school staff at pre-K through 12 institutions and licensed childcare workers. Important to remember that when we add a new phase into eligibility, we don't take away the old phases. So everyone who is previously eligible remains eligible. The next phase, which the state is targeting around March 5th, is that 1B3, which includes frontline essential workers, as well as people with 2 high-risk conditions. We'll then move into phases 2 and 3 with more members of the general public, as shown on this slide, in the spring and summer. We do not have more exact dates for those phases at this time. As you can see, we started February 8th this week with phase 1B2. People age 65 through 69 will make appointments as part of the general public pool at any available provider. We will be announcing today the plan to vaccinate the pre-K through 12 and licensed childcare employees really worked as a region to make this happen. The state's plan was for these people to be vaccinated over the course of the next 3 weeks. We have a plan that will allow 80% of them to be vaccinated this week without seriously reducing the number of vaccines available for the general public. Lots of questions have been coming in about eligibility for phase 1B3, frontline essential workers. You can see the list there: food and agriculture, manufacturing, etc. State did confirm that all food service workers, including restaurant employees, are included in phase 1B3. The exact definitions of who a frontline essential worker are anticipated to come closer to March 5th, which is in the anticipated start date for phase 1B3. Eligibility for vaccines is always determined by the state and not by San Juan Basin Public Health. So I do want to emphasize cocovidvaccine.org and 1-877-COVAX-CO to find providers, as well as to determine your eligibility if you're not sure what side of a line you fall on. As again, the general public will make appointments directly with providers as part of a general pool, and our educators and child care workers will be going through their employers as part of the plan that we're announcing today. We do have approved phase 1 providers all over La Plata County, as you can see, although many of them have not received any doses. Again, we continue to be limited by the number of doses. I do want to point out CDPHE on this list. The state will be operating on February 13th, a large-scale major clinic in Ignacio. About 500 people. I don't believe that the appointments are available for that yet, but they should be today or tomorrow. This is a really great opportunity for people in the southeast corner of the county to get vaccinated. We have had limited doses and providers available in that region. Locally, about 14% of La Plata County's total population have received a first dose, and about 40% of the 65 plus population has received a first dose in La Plata County. And that's about on schedule with the rest of the state. You can see our vaccinations given by provider. We're reliant on a wide network of vaccine providers. I do want to take a moment to give special acknowledgement to Animas Surgical Hospital. Not only have they given over 1,000 vaccines, they are also acting as the regional hub for the Pfizer vaccine. So they are giving vaccinations and all the while receiving doses that come to the entire 5-county Southwest Colorado region. And processing and redistributing those to other providers. So our big thanks to ASH for doing that and still providing quite a few vaccinations themselves. Once again, eligibility is determined by CDPHE and not by San Juan Basin Public Health, but we do have information on the website that appears on your screen, including who the current eligible phases are and where appointments can be made in our region. I now want to spend some time on mitigation. Mitigation is our term for public health orders and capacity restrictions and things like that. La Plata County is now in level blue, caution on the state's COVID-19 dial. That is not as a result of a marked improvement in our cases day over day. It is a result of the state changing the rules as far as the boundaries in between levels. So that's in effect as of this Saturday. A real detailed chart on here. You can go onto our website or the state website if you want to peruse this in more detail, but La Plata County was previously in level orange, high risk, now in level blue, caution. You'll notice the main difference on this slide and the next slide between the two is most establishments that were at 25% capacity are now at 50% capacity. As far as our special events, I did mention that there's a good chance that we'll be back in level yellow, just based in cases over the last couple of days. Not a lot of difference between blue and yellow for most establishments because they're both based on 50% capacity. But for our special events, we're talking about going from 250 to 175 people outdoors or from 175 to 100 people indoors at special events. So we do advise anyone working on a special event to plan under the level yellow restrictions. We would hate for anyone to plan an event and then have to downsize it, cancel tickets at the last moment. And based on our cases in the last couple of days, it is highly likely that La Plata County will be back in level yellow in the coming days. You might be wondering how we're now quickly moving from level to level when it was a very slow process before. The dial is now based on 7-day incidence rates and positivity rates rather than 14 days. So it is designed for counties to move more quickly in response to changing local conditions. I'll point out that we are in level blue. However, the level green is a little bit different in terms of how you qualify for it. And our 5-star businesses are not allowed to operate under the level green restrictions while La Plata County is in level blue, because there are additional requirements around a county having level green. And there really are a lot of risks entailed with large events and large capacities in level green. These are the new metrics to be concerned about. So as I said, we're most likely going to be back in level yellow in La Plata County in the coming days. The boundary between the two is 100 cases per 100,000 residents in 7 days. That's about 56 cases a week in La Plata County, or about 8 cases a day. For the last 4 days, we've had 12 to 15 cases a day in La Plata County. So we do expect to be in level yellow in the next couple of days. Again, not a whole lot of difference there except for our larger establishments and events. You'll also notice that positivity on that previous slide, the positivity boundaries between each level have come down. So before it was 5%, 10%, and 15% were the boundaries in test positivity. They're now 5, 7.5, and 10%. This places an additional emphasis on testing and testing availability. So it's really important that everyone take that to heart and get tested if they've been exposed or if they're in a high contact position in order to keep our positivity rate down and not move upwards on the dial. In order to move to a less restrictive level, again, we're meeting these metrics for a 1-week period instead of a 2-week period, and it's been made a little bit more automatic. In order to move to a more restrictive level, it's also been made more automatic. There's not going to be as much of the wait and see as there was under the previous version of the dial. At least that's how the state has represented it to us. So if a metric is exceeded for 7 days, a county will quickly move into the next level of the dial. So that is what we anticipate for La Plata County based on case incidence. I did mention that qualifying for level green or protect our neighbors is slightly different. There are additional metrics which you see on the right. Qualifying for level green also requires a mitigation and containment plan with widespread agreement from local community leaders, including county leadership, the city, cities, I should say, hospitals, law enforcement, local public health, and our tribal partners. The intent is really, how are you going to manage this new normal in level green into the far future? And how are you going to respond to adverse changes in any of these metrics as a community rather than relying on the state? Thank you for your time.
Super. Thank you a lot, Brian. A valuable update, and good to know that we're moving every 7 days instead of 2 weeks now. That certainly changes things. I think it preps the audience for more movement between those ranges. So I'll welcome Jim McKay with Ska Fabrication and let him talk about a new capital partner that they brought on. Morning, Jim.
Morning. Thanks, Jameson. Yeah, I'll try and share some good news with you as quickly as I can here. I always like to start by clarifying Ska Fabricating is not part of Ska Brewing. Despite sharing an awful lot of branding similarities, we're a separate business, but our story starts with the brewery. Back in the late 2000s, the brewery decided that they wanted to expand their market and get beyond just providing kegs to local restaurants and bars and get into canning. At that time, looking at canning equipment, there just wasn't a lot available. There was not a lot of craft brewers in the country at that point. So Matt, who was the more mechanical of the 3 founders of the brewery, started looking at how he could build his own. He went out and looked at what was available, and there were big, expensive solutions for the likes of a Coors or an Anheuser-Busch. So started sourcing parts together and building automation equipment for their line. It worked. Other brewers saw it, they liked it, and started asking if they could buy some of the equipment that he was putting together. The next thing you know, Ska Fabrication was formed in 2012 in a little 500 square foot building just near Mancos. And Matt essentially was the co-founder of that, along with a guy by the name of Dan Morris. Depalletizers were our primary product. They still are, just so everybody understands what that is. We essentially take a pallet of empty cans and we put it into a machine and press the start button. It lifts it up and then pushes it off a layer at a time. Those cans go through a rinser and essentially go into what they call a filler, which is actually where they put the beer in the cans, put the lid on it, and move it down the line. as I said, that's essentially our bread and butter. We've added a lot of other pieces such as conveyance and other components like that that we resell so that we can provide entire line automation solutions for our constituents. Our constituents are still mostly craft beer, but we've branched out since then. We do a lot of canning and bottling for kombucha and iced coffee and canned wine and waters and sodas. And then we branched beyond drinks into things like spices and pharmaceuticals, yogurt, peanut butter, oils, etc. We have had plenty of growth. We're in every state, every province in Canada. We're in over 30 countries, from Brazil to Russia. We even have 3 machines that are operating north of the Arctic Circle. We've grown the business up to be about 2,000 customers now. As I said, we've branched out of beer. I would say 2020 was probably about 2/3 beer customers and 1/3 beyond. So we're starting to diversify our market as well. We are at about 70 employees right now. 50 of those are in Durango. We have other folks spread out all over the country who do everything from sales to do installation support. We also have an employee in Sweden who drives our European sales. We're in 2 locations here in Durango. We're in the old Ska Brewery, another connection back to the brewery, I guess, which is on Turner Drive in Bodo. We also do our fabrication out of a location just across the bridge behind Home Depot. In the past year alone, we've recruited from all over the country. Our COO, who joined us last year, came from Denver. Our head of manufacturing came from Wisconsin, and we've hired engineers from Denver, Chicago, and Texas. We also recruit a lot locally. Our CFO is a Fort Lewis College grad. We have quite a few FLC grads and of course, lots and lots of other people that we bring in locally. And we tend to want to hire and promote from within. So COVID for us really caused a massive ripple, if you will, in our primary market, as you can imagine. You've seen it locally where our restaurants and bars have all had to shut down and have come back at reduced capacity. The breweries themselves that had their outlets there have also had to reduce their capacity significantly. So this caused a real panic back in the spring where the breweries all decided, the only way they could survive was essentially to can or bottle their product and be able to offer it offsite in retail. So that led to them either getting into canning or massively expanding their canning operations. They either did that by building their own lines or they recruited what's called mobile canners. So there's a whole business out there of companies that take an entire canning line from location to location and try and do 2 or 3 locations a day. They set up their equipment, they tear down their equipment, and they move on to the next business. So consequently, we got a lot of phone calls, a lot of inquiries to buy equipment to be able to expand those lines by the breweries as well as by the canners. This increase in canning caused a secondary problem in our industry, and that was a massive can shortage. The industry fell about 2 billion cans short of what they needed this year in order to put their beer into cans, caused what we call the candemic. So consequently, there's been a lot of scrambling to go out and find cans as well. So there's a third little business in here, which are the people who essentially source those cans and put custom labels on them for the brewers. They also buy our equipment. They buy the depalletizer to take the empty shiny cans off. They run it down their labeling line, and then they buy repalletizers to put those labeled empty cans back on pallets and then consequently sell them out to their end customers, the brewers. All of that demand caused quite a spike for us. We had a record year of growth in 2020. We also had our challenges. We had 2 outbreaks and a number of other folks who tested positive for COVID, which caused us to have to shut down periodically. So we lost a lot of production time. We also had a lot of supply chain issues and consequently have really had our lead times really expand, which has actually cost us to lose a lot of business because people are obviously scrambling and trying to put something in place sooner rather than later, and they don't want to wait 6 months for their equipment. So we've been scrambling to increase our capacity through hiring as well as doing efficiency improvements. In order to do that, we need money, which is where the news comes in. So we had been approached by a group called the Hanover Group. They're a private equity group out of Oregon and California. they came to us in the spring and had some initial chats with us about investing in our company. We got to the point of a letter of intent, which is, as you probably know, not a binding contract, but definitely an indication that they want to get heavier involved. But with COVID not going away quickly, they kind of got cold feet, pulled back in the summer, and then kept in touch with us and kept an eye on how we did. Due to our success through the summer and keeping the lights on, they re-engaged with us in the fall and brought in a second partner called Centerfield Partners. It's another private equity firm. And together with Centerfield, we managed to put a deal together, and we closed the acquisition on December the 31st. It was important to the company that we bring in somebody who was a finance partner as opposed to bringing in money from, for instance, a bigger player that would just essentially swallow us and move us, potentially move us out of Durango. It's very important. We were based here. We built our business here. We want to continue to be based out of Durango for forever, if possible, the long future. These companies both have a long track record of a buy and hold. Their typical hold period is between 5 and 7 years. And they have a long track record as well of leaving the business alone and letting us essentially run with the team that's in place. So the plan going forward is essentially business as usual with a little bit thicker wallet in order for us to improve the efficiencies as well as to be able to grow the business. We foresee in 2021 a lot of organic growth. We are hiring like crazy, and that was a good reminder, by the way, that we need to get some of those recs out there through the Alliance. And we are also looking at inorganic growth. So this is one of the really nice things that comes as a result of this acquisition is that we can now start to look. I mentioned that we resell a lot of the pieces of our product line downstream. The logical growth for us is to bring some of that stuff in-house. We don't want to grow it organically. We want to go out and look at established businesses, probably some of the partners that we already work with, and see whether or not they're interested in becoming part of our fold. And in those cases, that expands our manufacturing capability. It expands our reach into some markets that we're not necessarily in right now. But also allows us to essentially maintain the team here in Durango and continue to grow this as the headquarters. It's 2021 is going to be an interesting year. We do face a lot of headwinds being based in Durango. As everybody on this call knows, there's challenges with finding space and buildings. I'm really glad to hear, Mike, that La Posta is continuing to evolve and grow. That's been obviously a target of ours for a long time as far as locating. We have labor challenges here in town. It's a little bit more expensive to hire and retain people here, as well as transportation challenges not being based on a transportation hub and having to ship heavy equipment to customers around the world. But we shall overcome it, and this will help us do that. The founders, Matt and Dan, are still heavily involved with the business. Matt's running manufacturing and engineering. Dan is running the fabrication part of it. Matt and I are still on the new board. The new board plans to visit us quarterly once they're able to, once COVID relaxes a little bit. And I think part of it for them, honestly, is the enticement to be able to get out and play locally, whether it's skiing or mountain bike season. So we have plans to stay here and great big plans for 2021. So stay tuned.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the update, Jim. We do have one question out there. Does ScottFab offer summer internship or work opportunities for college students?
Yeah, we definitely do. We have done that in the past, and we plan on continuing doing that. In fact, that's how we ended up with our last financial person is as a recruit from the Fort on an internship.
Awesome. Thanks so much again for the update and your time this morning. We'll move on to Commissioner Solka with an update on the county.
Jameson, we have a hand up. Can we grab that real quick?
You bet.
Ethan? Ethan, will you go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
This is Ethan.
Go ahead, Ethan.
My hand, I didn't mean to.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mike, we can. Go ahead.
This is Mike Sigrist. I'm standing in for Commissioner Salka. He's had a conflicting meeting this morning, so I don't have a whole lot to report from the county other than to reiterate what's already been discussed in terms of both the efforts at La Posta, and I want to say that I think we've had some really good cooperation and maybe a whole new kind of look at that area from both the county as well as the city, and so I'm very optimistic that we're going to be able to move something forward out there in the next year. So I'm really enthusiastic about that. And also want to really give a shout out and a thanks to Mike for his support and cooperation and insights and contacts that he's helped in terms of my efforts to reinvigorate the Regional Housing Alliance and really start looking at some real live kind of opportunities over the next year or two in terms of the development of additional workforce housing. So, and I guess the other thing is just, the good news is I think that the county and as well as the city actually, and I'll leave it up to them to talk about their situation, but the county certainly has come through the so far, and I think optimistically looking forward through the pandemic, with a really healthy balance sheet in terms of financing. A lot of it due to the increased internet sales, which we do benefit from in terms of sales tax now. And the other thing that might be of interest to you is one of the things we will be looking at in this coming year is working closely with Dado in terms of standing up a short-term rental licensing program to kind of level the playing field between the other lodging, the typical traditional lodging operators and businesses, along with the growth and expansion of short-term rentals and looking at the financial and economic impacts of that and hopefully bringing them into the fold in terms of being partners and being part of the overall tourism development and promotion throughout the county. So I think those are probably the main topics, and really appreciate the information. I'd love to get the slides that Dan presented in terms of real estate transactions. Maybe Mike, if you could forward those to me so I could pass those along, I would appreciate it.
Will do.
I really appreciate the update, Mike. As you all have heard a couple times on this call, there is a lot of talk around attainable housing, workforce housing, and the alliances. We're excited to work with the city and the county and our other partners to try and bring some resolution to that topic. On that note, we'll move on to Councilor Noseworthy for an update from the city. Morning.
Good morning. Yeah, workforce housing is a huge issue and was discussed at length during our strategic planning, and we will be looking at what are some measures the city can do along with land acquisition, land banking, and also infrastructure, looking at some of the contributions we might be able to make. So that will be a huge effort in the next quarter as we think through that. I did want to talk a little bit about the Durango business relief efforts, and all of this you can find on durangogov.org/DBRF. So the first is that our Durango Business Relief Fund, we had 218 grants totaling $820,000 that were made to businesses, sole proprietors, and nonprofits. And in that case, we actually received funds from both the county and the BID, some of their CARES money, and we consolidated all of that, and the city ran that application process and did that in an incredible short length of time. We also have the delivery fee reimbursement program. So that's for restaurants and food establishments that are using a third-party delivery. The city will reimburse the fees that exceed 15%, and those requests need to be accepted by February 28th. Then we also developed a utility forgiveness program for qualifying businesses and individuals. Applications are accepted through March 21. We basically provide about 3 months credit on your utility bills for qualifying individuals and businesses. And then again, I'm going to give that again. That's durangogov.org/DBRF. All of that information and the applications are there. We are busy working on the bump outs planning for spring. Looking forward to that returning. And so we'll have more information in a few weeks on that. And then we've launched Durango Cares, which is a way of promoting public health practices as for the health of small businesses. So it's you'll be seeing more of that around town and in businesses, but it is an effort to really get the community to support the public health activities that need to take place. I think that's, again, also I'll add that La Posta remains high on our list as well for working to develop that. Thanks.
Super. Thanks so much, Councilor Noseworthy. We'll move to Ashley Tarkington, the mayor of Bayfield. Morning, Ashley.
Morning. Thank you, everybody. I think the big talk right now in the town of Bayfield on the economic front is our economic recovery position. We hired it was a 6-month position. We are finding that that position was absolutely vital to our business community that was vastly underserved for years. And right now there's discussion of keeping and creating that position. I think Bayfield's kind of at the right growth for a true economic development department. We don't know what it looks like right now. We're just in the initial talks, but there is a potential to absorb the chamber and kind of partner with the town on that. I feel like this is a really good time to use some of that increased sales tax revenue to give back to our business community. I was kind of shocked to learn how many businesses still don't use a computer, do not have a website, don't do any sort of online advertising. I just think there's so much opportunity to really boost our business community. And then I just want to take this opportunity to thank Upper Pine Fire Department on all of their efforts with the COVID response. Those guys are just top notch right now, leading in the state. We've had a lot of state representatives come and tour the facility. What they're doing with testing and vaccination is I just want it to not go unnoticed for our community. So I wanted to thank them at this time. And I think that's it.
Super. Thank you, Mayor Tarkington. We'll move to Sharon Craig, trustee with the town of Ignacio. Morning, Sharon.
Morning. So our 2020 sales tax numbers were very strong as well. We came in under budget, so we added to reserves. We still currently don't have any debt. So considering the year, we're very positive moving forward. On the affordable housing, workforce housing front, we did start looking at our Rock Creek property and what would it take to develop that. And we do have some interest in developing, but what we realized is as a town, we're going to need to help get that infrastructure so that development can be affordable housing. So we're working on that currently. We also are working on broadband planning, and we knew that there was going to be grant funding available for underserved communities through the state. So as we worked through that process, we realized that we needed an ISP provider to apply for that grant funding. So we are collaborating with Fast Tracks, and they have applied for that grant funding to get fiber to premise. And we're going to be working with them. Obviously, we have to wait and see how the grant funding goes. The Creative District is launching a logo contest, and we're looking forward to kind of branding our Creative District that way. We're looking for local artists to help us do that. And we have some exciting projects coming up this spring through that as well. And I think that is all I have. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Sharon. Move to Tim Walsworth, the executive director, bid, 5-star, blue capacity dial. Anything else we want to assign you to, Tim?
That's enough, thank you.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for a little time. Sorry I'm late. I just dropped my kid off from school, but Mike, I made it like right on time, man. Perfect. So that your agenda is perfect. So thank you guys for a little time here. So there's been changes to the dial levels, right? We've seen that. La Plata County is now in level blue. Been kind of a crazy 8 or 9 days. Not this past weekend, but the one before, we were sort of in orange, but really in red. And then we were really in orange. And then we jumped all the way to blue. And now we're wondering if we're going to move back to yellow. So it's like a rainbow of dial level colors for us, which causes confusion amongst businesses, really. But the changes to the dial, here's how I would kind of sum them up. There's 3 metrics that determine where a community is on the dial. It's hospitalizations, and that's been about the same the whole time. That hasn't changed from old dial to new dial. The percent positivity, that has changed. It's a little tighter now. Example, to be in level yellow under the old dial, you couldn't be higher than 10% positivity rate. Now that's reduced down to 7.5%. And then the biggest change is in the incidence rates. And it used to be a range of incidents over 2 weeks total per 100,000 people. And that would, whatever your number was when you did the math, would put you on the dial. That's changed now where it's over only 7 days. And so having a smaller set of numbers that you're doing that math on, it's going to make it more volatile. And we're going to move between levels is what we think quicker than we used to. The state used to have this, okay, you're out of compliance for 2 weeks with the metric level, the level for the metric for the level. We're going to consult with you and you're going to have 2 more weeks. And then if you still haven't figured it out, then we're going to move you. So it's like a month. And now it's going to get down to 7 days. And Mike's put up a slide right here that shows this new 7-day total per 100,000 people. The threshold at level blue is 100. And so you guys can see we're 3 days past that threshold. If we stay past it for 4 more days, we change to level yellow, and then all the allowances and capacities change, right? So we're just trying to understand all that and make sure we know what it is and see and watch the right stats so we can anticipate changes. And this is the key one. The way that it affects 5-star, 5-star still going strong. We have 55 restaurants and a couple of gym type businesses that have been certified. So that's really good. No one has dropped their certification. But as you move up the dial, level blue, there's only one more level green. That's the highest and the most a community can be open. And so the benefits of the 5-star really change as you move to less restrictive levels of the dial. And instead of getting increased capacities than another business that doesn't have that status, the benefits really become 5-star is an insurance if you move to a more restrictive level on the dial. And right here, we're looking at that potentially happening. So just the way we talk to businesses about it will change a little bit, but we had a fear that perhaps the program had kind of, maybe it wasn't going to be as valuable anymore, but with the volatility of moving to different color levels, I think it really does still have value, and we're plugging away on it. So that's my report. Mike, is there anything to add? Okay, that's what I got, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. We'll move to Brigham Ringel, Executive Director of the Community Foundation. Morning, Brigham.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. I'm your last one on the agenda, so everybody can take a deep breath. I won't take much time, but I really appreciate the platform here. Thanks, Mike, for pulling that up. So as of October, we had given out $1.25 million in COVID rapid response. At the end of the year, we are at $1.7 million in COVID rapid response grants. It went to everybody. You can see in the circle, it went to animal protection, arts and culture, education, environment, human services, youth, and other. The Community Foundation feels like the nonprofits are really the backbone of the community. And so we really worked hard to raise money and support all the different sectors. In addition to that, we gave out $2.3 million to Southwest Colorado nonprofits in our regular granting cycles. I like to add those together. We've never been at this number before. We are at $4 million that we supported the community, the nonprofit community specifically, in 2020. In 2021, we are really working hard to make sure that housing and food security is high on our list, and that those people, when it's still cold out and we're still waiting for some aid to come, that we've got money to support the organizations that help our most vulnerable. So it was an amazing year. It was a very busy year. You can imagine my finance director is exhausted. And if anybody wants more details, our annual report is on our website. It's swcommunityfoundation.org. Again, that's swcommunityfoundation.org. These grants went to all sorts of really innovative and creative programming. One of the things that we're doing in 2021 is forward purchasing with farmers. So we have already purchased the vegetables that we would like to go to our food pantries from the farmers. So they've got that money in hand. They can use that for crop. They also plant for us. And then those vegetables just start to roll in. So we have high quality, locally grown vegetables going to the food pantries all this year in 2021. Last year in 2020, we bought whatever was left, and that was pretty limiting. So we changed our strategy for 2021. And that, unless anybody has any questions, I'd be remiss not to talk about David Brooks. He is coming next Monday. It's a community conversation. Tickets can be purchased at our website, swcommunityfoundation.org. They're $40 for a household. He is coming really prepared to talk about the rural-urban divide, about trust, how so many of us just aren't trusting institutions or each other. And he's done an interview with KSUT, which is running today. And if you miss it, it's on their website. And then it was in the Herald. Last night I saw it on the Herald. So he's coming. It's a great conversation. He's kind of a grown-up in the room. He's a really level-headed voice. And I hope that we are able to have a great conversation and start to move the community into a better place so that everybody can share ideas and have civil conversations. And that wraps me up.
Regan, just for clarification, that's a virtual event, correct? He's not.
It is a virtual event. Yep, on Zoom, and you'll if you buy a ticket, then you get a Zoom link 48 hours before the event.
Super. Thank you so much, Brigham.
Thanks, Jameson.
We're a few minutes ahead this morning. I don't even know what to do with myself. Really good meeting this morning. I think, as everyone can hear, Mike and Emily and the Alliance are incredibly active with our public and private partners, really trying to drive some of these strategic initiatives forward in 2021. Again, the annual report, that should have gone out to everyone. If you haven't seen that, I encourage you to get in touch with one of the board members, Mike or Emily. We'd be happy to get you some of those. I think even in 2020, that's a really important document to kind of read through, share it, and kind of look back, I think, at some of what the Alliance accomplished this past year in the midst of, a pandemic. Big thanks to standing up that 5-star program. I know the last 45 days, that's been a huge effort, and I think it's really, really helped the business community. Again, as Tim said, as our levels kind of go up, that 5-star program is going to help them even more. And then we're in this together. We continue to navigate it. I think the community as a whole, especially the business community, has really navigated this pandemic well and continues to. And that's all I've got. I'll turn it over to Mike for any closing comments.
Thank you, Jameson. Yeah, it's nice to be able to give back a little bit of time since we normally take time. But thank you for all the panelists, especially Dan, who jumped in last minute on the real estate data. I will publish the slide deck out, and I'll send that to you, Mike, as well. And Emily will post the meeting here literally within minutes of us finishing. What's great to hear around the business community is the alignment. We're kind of migrating, or I should say transitioning out from response and recovery to strategy, which is great. Not to say that we're out of the woods yet, by no means, but at least we have one foot in each world now, whereas I couldn't say that 6 months ago. And the alignment that we're seeing in terms of what our priorities for the community is really starting to take hold and starting to gel. So really appreciate that and appreciate everybody's support. Thank you for attending this morning.